Now, what do you guys think that we should do, notwithstanding the whole find out what happened at the Clef Club business? Is there, because we've got a year and a half, Pew said they were gonna accept the LOI.
Well, no, the LOIs are, I think were actually reviewed last week. And notice is going out literally in the next couple of days if they've been approved. So it's possible that our LOI will not be approved and this whole thing would be moot. You know, but
I don't think
the
that.
indications are that it's a strong proposal and that they're going to approve it. They said they would continue, let it go through the process. They weren't going to pull it because of this last minute, issue.
Okay.
So the LOI, we will hear real soon. There might be an email sitting for me right now. But I think we should work on the assumption that the LOI was approved.
Right.
And so if that were the case, we could try to resurrect the arrangement with the Clef Club. The full application is due June 27th for the full, and then the project will begin in January of 2020. Otherwise, for Pew, we basically have to wait a year, and then we would have to submit another LOI. And of course, we would lose basically a year and a half of time. So-
You would have to submit another LOI, or you would, if this LOI was approved, I thought that what you had told us was that they would consider then just letting you submit a complete application in the next round.
That wasn't clarified. You mean
Okay.
we would skip the LOI next year?
Yeah, I thought that was, but I
I
could be
did
very
not
wrong.
get that.
Or could it be the same letter of intent with a different co-signer?
No, because this is the thing I was asking them is, could this project go through another entity? And they said, and if you write the LOIs and the applications, you know that they're very much tied into the institution.
Right.
Its mission, its vision, its audience, its programming. How does this project
books.
relate to your long-term plan, your programming, your audience? So you can't just pull it from one sponsor and give it to another. It's
okay.
very much tied to the institution that applies.
I see.
So, yeah.
Okay.
We'll probably have to do another.
And did Helen work on the LOI with you?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, I drafted it, I sat down with her and Lovett, and they gave me
bios and all that
their
stuff.
feedback, I incorporated all of their suggestions, and, yeah, it was a very,
I'm wondering if,
Oh.
just say,
hold on, Steve.
Oh.
Go ahead, Susan.
just say the heavens open and we can get a hold of the board and say, look, they passed they've accepted our LOI. And is there any way you might revisit your decision? And do you think what we need to convince Pew to accept the full proposal, would we need like letters from that board or a meeting with the board to reassure Pew that this would be something that this would go on? I mean, could that possibly?
Well, let me tell you something that Bill Adair at Pew said to me. He said, well, if the LOI gets approved, do you want me to call the president of the Clef Club and explain that, this, he offered to do that.
Well,
Wow.
then,
Did you say yes?
yeah.
But then he said, well, maybe that's not a good idea after all that's happened. So he sort of backtracked a little bit, but he initially offered to do that. So I think there is a possibility of resurrecting this relationship with the Clef Club and maybe, making the pitch to the board of why this is in their best interest.
Homer, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I'm thinking step 0.1 outside of that is that it might be, and you mentioned Dr. Watson, Friends of the Philadelphia Jazz Archive. Like, seriously, to start pulling in some people with international clout to help us not only win local issues, but also win funders, because we still have to, $300,000 is chump change.
Right.
We have to raise, it could be $1 million over a period of time that's necessary.
Right.
If we could talk $1 million to any board, they'll take you seriously. So we have to figure out the steps to try to pull together partners, local businesses and corporations and other funders and individual donors to get on board because they want to see this happen,
And I'll-
wherever it happens.
I'll just interject, went to the Institute for Jazz Studies at Rutgers, Newark, and the president of that was really excited about, he said, Philadelphia is so important, we love that you're doing this. We can only collect the big, the Count Basie's and the Dizzy Gillespie, but you guys can collect all the local, that is so important, we want to help you. And he laid out a strategy like you just did. He said, you got to put together a group of influential people and go to some of these funders and say, look, we have a $5 million vision, we want you to help us realize it. So
Think
he's
big.
thinking along the same exact
Yeah, we're getting started
lines
with
that you are.
$300,000.
And this is the international, the biggest jazz archives in the world, basically, right?
They are the biggest,
Yeah,
yes.
and he's saying that, so I think there's real sympathy or, synchronicity with what you're
Right.
proposing there, so. Steve wanted to jump in?
Yeah. Now, what were you saying, Jack, that there was synchronicity between what?
What the president of the Institute for Jazz Studies at Rutgers, what he envisioned and what Homer just outlined, which is to bring together like a sort of impactful Friends of the Philly Jazz Archives, influential people that could sort of help move this forward beyond just the 300,000, but to really make it a sustainable, major program, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, here's what I see as part of the problem. I think we're all in kind of an agreement that we need to have an established institution, like a physical building, that this is going to go through. But then there's a question about it's not only the long-term money that's coming in, but who are actually the people that are running the thing and managing it. And it seems to me that on the problem that we're facing is, on one hand, Clef Club, if they had been cooperative and everything had gone, would have been a really good partnership. And now there's this question, like, well, this may not be so good, and they may not be the right place, the perfect place. And I think, I heard what Gerald said before, sort of defending them, but I think we all have to understand the fact that ever since I was around when Bernie Watson at the William Penn created the Clef Club, with Don Gardner and with Mr. C and all those people. And ever since then, it's been sort of a rocky institution. They've never really been smooth sailing. They've never really fulfilled the promise of what we were all hoping it would be, with a really strong leadership and a real strong effect. I mean, they've done a lot of wonderful things, and they're all wonderful, wonderful people. So, for instance, if we were to go forward with them, it wouldn't be them that's managing the archive. There would have to be a new staff, a new team of people. So the question that I asked Jack is, if Pew is funding the Jazz Archive project, and they understand that this group of people sitting around a table, all of whom are quite brilliant and engaged and really trying to understand this, and you have these established connections with places like Rutgers, why is it that Pew would be granting this extension of the grant to the institution, to the Clef Club, and not to this nonprofit entity, to the Philadelphia Jazz Archives? It seems to me that it's pretty clear to the funder that they should be giving you guys the money, or us the money, however you want to define it. You give the Philadelphia Jazz Archives the money, and the Clef Club is really the physical sponsor and a physical home for it.
You're suggesting that this group become a separate 501c3 as a board? Is that?
No.
Because that's the only way that would work, right?
Yeah.
No, what he's asking is if the Clef Club,
As I told you last night, Jack, and I know you told me clearly that this would not work, but like I have my 501c3, which has been incorporated in Philadelphia since 1992, CultureWorks, is still viable and healthy, more or less. We don't have a lot of money. but that's an opportunity to work as a fiscal, but we could definitely be a fiscal sponsor for the Jazz Archives, because our goals are exactly in alignment.
Well, my answer when you raised that last night was, again, from my experience writing grants to Pew, they want to know, what your organization does, what its mission is, what its audience is, what its programs are, what its physical space is like, and how that all aligns with your vision for this project. And the 501c3 you're mentioning, CultureWorks, I don't think it has any of that enough to convince Pew to fund it. You know what I'm saying?
What he's asking, it seems to me,
What I'm actually saying is that that's not, what I would argue with them is that they're funding something at Jazz Archive that does not exist. And that this has to be built. And it's not like, even if you go to Temple or to Penn or to the Club, there's no Jazz Archives there. That doesn't exist. So what they're really doing is funding a new startup Jazz Archive.
and it seems what he's asking, if the Clef Club is serving its role is mainly as fiscal sponsor, why that role isn't transferable over the course of assuming the grant, the next stage is funded. At the end of that period, would there be a physical location?
Yeah.
So Clef Club is both a fiscal sponsor
And it's physical.
and
Yeah.
and you need a physical location.
Right.
Okay.
And
So that's why
in
we just
response,
have a
Steve, I know Heather
fiscal
wants to.
Yeah, Heather,
Let me just quickly respond, Steve, that one of the sort of selling points in the letter of intent was the Clef Club does have a phenomenal archives now, the records of, the Black Musicians Union, to which all the great jazz musicians belonged, and that would be the foundational collection on which these other collections would be added. So that there already is a physical archives, we would just be enhancing
Building.
it. That was one of the main strong points of the proposal. So, that's sort of different from what you're envisioning, but.
Well, only a little bit, but I mean, I know that's what the Clef Club is based on. They're super important archives of the Black musicians local. But how extensive is that, and how well managed is it? Is it available to the public? And is it a working archive now?